November 15, 1944, 800 meters above the frost-covered fields near Metz, France. Hauptmann Klaus Richter surveyed the American positions through his binoculars from the commander's cupola of his Tiger I heavy tank, watching columns of olive-drab vehicles crawling across the valley like insects. The morning mist clung to the ground, and Richter could taste the metallic bite of winter air mixed with diesel fumes. He believed this would be another easy victory for his veteran crew, another demonstration of German armored superiority that had dominated European battlefields for years. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. What Richter couldn't foresee was that within the next 4 hours, his unshakable confidence in German technological supremacy would crumble along with everything he thought he knew about American industrial might. The Tiger I represented the pinnacle of German engineering prowess in 1944. Weighing 57 tons and armed with the fearsome 88mm KWK-36 gun, it could penetrate any Allied tank at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. Richter's particular machine, numbered 231, had accumulated 43 confirmed vehicle eliminations across the eastern and western fronts. The frontal armor measured 100 millimeters thick, sloped at strategic angles that could deflect most Allied anti-tank rounds, like pebbles off a cathedral wall. Richter himself embodied the elite of the German armored forces. At 28 years old, he had commanded tanks since the early campaigns and wore the Knight's Cross with oak leaves earned during the advance toward Moscow. His crew consisted of 4 other veterans. Obergefreiter Hans Müller served as gunner, Gefreiter Otto Weber operated the radio, Unteroffizier Fritz Kellner drove the massive machine, and Gefreiter Ludwig Beck loaded the enormous 88mm shells. Together, they had survived 3 years of mechanized warfare across 2 continents. Amerikanische Schweine, Müller muttered, adjusting his sight picture through the gunner's optics. Look how they cluster together like sheep. No tactical spacing, no proper reconnaissance, these are not soldiers. The target that had drawn their attention was a column of American Sherman tanks advancing through the valley below. Intelligence reports suggested these were elements of the 4th Armored Division, part of General Patton's 3rd Army that had been grinding eastward through France since the Normandy breakout. To Richter's experienced eye, the Americans appeared to be conducting a routine advance to contact, apparently unaware that a Tiger unit occupied the high ground overlooking their route. "Range to lead vehicle?" Richter inquired, his voice calm and professional, despite the anticipation building in his chest. 1,400 meters, Müller responded immediately. Perfect engagement range for high-velocity armor piercing. The Sherman tanks below represented everything that Richter found contemptible about American military doctrine. Mass-produced, lightly armored, and mounting a 75mm gun that could barely scratch Tiger armor even at point-blank range, they seemed to epitomize quantity over quality. Intelligence briefings had emphasized that American industry produced over 49,000 Sherman tanks during the war, compared to Germany's 1,347 Tiger Is. The Americans, it seemed, planned to simply overwhelm German technical superiority through sheer numbers. What neither Richter nor German intelligence fully comprehended was the sophisticated coordination system that enabled American combined arms operations. High above the battlefield, invisible to the German crew, Republic P-47 Thunderbolt fighter bombers circled in carefully orchestrated patterns, maintaining constant radio communication with ground controllers attached to the advancing armored columns. Second Lieutenant James Hawk Morrison piloted Thunderbolt number 427856, call sign Razor Leader, at 12,000 feet above the same battlefield that Richter surveyed. Morrison was 23 years old, born in Detroit, Michigan, where his father had worked the assembly lines at Ford Motor Company before the war transformed American industry into the largest military production complex in human history. Morrison himself had witnessed this transformation firsthand, watching his neighborhood change as factories retooled from manufacturing civilian automobiles to producing tanks, aircraft engines, and ammunition around the clock. His P-47 Thunderbolt represented the opposite philosophy from the Tiger tank below, Rather than pursuing maximum individual performance, American engineers had designed the Thunderbolt for reliability, maintainability, and mass production. The aircraft weighed 7 tons empty, was powered by a Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp radial engine producing 2,000 horsepower and could carry up to 2,500 pounds of bombs or rockets. Most importantly, American factories produced 15,660 Thunderbolts during the war, ensuring that lost aircraft could be rapidly replaced. Morrison's particular aircraft carried 8 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets, each weighing 60 pounds and capable of penetrating 4 inches of armor plate. The rockets used a shaped charge warhead design that focused explosive force into a narrow jet of superheated metal, specifically engineered to defeat the thick armor of German heavy tanks. What made these weapons truly devastating was not their individual power, but their coordination with sophisticated target marking systems and real-time intelligence sharing between air and ground forces. "Razor leader, this is Compass Base," crackled through Morrison's radio headset. "We have eyes on enemy armor, grid reference Delta 4792. Friendly armor is advancing from the south. Immediate air support requested." Morrison acknowledged the transmission and began his descent, unaware that he was about to participate in a technological demonstration that would fundamentally alter the tactical balance between air and ground forces. The voice belonged to Staff Sergeant Robert Chen, a Chinese-American forward air controller embedded with the advancing Sherman column. Chen operated the SCR-542 radio system, which provided direct communication between ground units and tactical aircraft within a 50-mile radius. Down in the valley, the Sherman crews remained oblivious to both the Tiger threat and the air support circling overhead. Sergeant First Class Michael O'Brien commanded the lead Sherman, an M4A3E8 variant mounting a 76mm gun and additional frontal armor. O'Brien was a 31-year-old career soldier from Boston who had served in North Africa and Sicily before participating in the Normandy invasion. His crew included 4 other men. Corporal Danny Rossetti from Brooklyn operated the gun. Private First Class William Jackson from Alabama drove the tank. Corporal Jose Martinez from Texas handled radio communications, and Private Carl Anderson from Minnesota loaded ammunition. "Movement on the ridgeline," Jackson reported through the intercom. "Looks like a farmhouse, but something doesn't seem right about the silhouette." O'Brien raised his binoculars and studied the distant structure. After 3 years of combat, he had developed an instinct for detecting camouflaged positions, and something about the angles visible through the morning haze triggered his suspicions. The shape appeared too geometric, too precisely positioned to be natural terrain features. "Martinez, get on the radio to Compass Base," O'Brien ordered. "Report possible enemy armor. Grid Delta 4792. Request immediate reconnaissance." This communication initiated the chain of events that would demonstrate the power of integrated American military systems. Within 90 seconds, Chen had relayed the grid coordinates to Morrison's flight, cross-referenced the position with intelligence maps, and coordinated with artillery units to provide backup fire support if needed. The entire process occurred through standardized procedures practiced thousands of times across multiple theaters of operation. Meanwhile, Richter observed the American column's cautious advance with growing amusement. Through his binoculars, he could see individual Sherman tanks pausing, apparently conducting reconnaissance activities that seemed pointless given their inferior position and equipment. The Americans appeared to be following their typical doctrine of methodical preparation rather than bold action, exactly the kind of timid approach that had allowed German forces to dominate early war engagements. "They're stopping again," Weber reported from his radio operator's position, probably calling for instructions from their headquarters. "Americans never make decisions without checking with 10 different officers first." Richter chuckled, a sound that his crew had learned to associate with impending combat success. In his experience, American forces relied too heavily on complex coordination systems that slowed their reactions and revealed their positions through excessive radio traffic. German doctrine emphasized local initiative and rapid exploitation of tactical opportunities, principles that had served them well across multiple campaigns. "Muller, prepare armor piercing," We'll take the lead vehicle first, then work our way through the column systematically, Richter commanded. They've given us perfect targets, nicely spaced for individual engagement. The Tiger's massive gun began its precise rotation toward the target, hydraulic systems humming quietly as Muller adjusted elevation and windage calculations. At 1,400 meters, with minimal wind and clear visibility, the 88mm gun could place rounds within a meter-wide circle with devastating effect. The tungsten core armor-piercing shell weighed 10 kilograms and would strike the Sherman's frontal armor at over 1,000 meters per second, creating kinetic energy sufficient to penetrate any American tank in service. But 8,000 feet above Richter's position, Morrison had completed his target identification procedures and begun his attack approach. The P-47's engine roared as Morrison pushed the throttle forward, diving toward the camouflaged Tiger at 300 miles per hour. His aircraft carried not just high-explosive rockets, but also a sophisticated gun sight system that calculated ballistic trajectories automatically, compensating for aircraft speed, altitude, and target movement. "Razor leader beginning attack run," Morrison announced over the radio. "Target confirmed as heavy armor, coordinates Delta 4792. The technological disparity between German and American approaches became apparent in these crucial seconds. Richter's Tiger represented the culmination of traditional armor doctrine. Thick steel, powerful guns, and veteran crews operating as individual units with minimal external support. Morrison's Thunderbolt embodied industrial warfare, mass-produced platforms integrated into comprehensive command and control systems that coordinated multiple weapon types across vast geographical areas. Chen, monitoring the radio traffic from his position with the Sherman column, began marking the target with colored smoke shells fired from his unit's 60mm mortar. The purple smoke would provide visual confirmation of the target location and help coordinate multiple attack aircraft if needed. This procedure had been refined through thousands of similar engagements across Europe and the Pacific, creating standardized methods that allowed American forces to concentrate overwhelming firepower against specific targets within minutes. "Muller, fire," Richter commanded, unaware of the aircraft diving toward his position. The Tiger's massive gun erupted with a flash of flame and cloud of smoke that temporarily obscured Richter's vision. The 88mm shell streaked across the valley at nearly twice the speed of sound, striking O'Brien's Sherman precisely in the front armor plate. However, the M4A3E8's improved armor deflected the round, sending sparks flying, but leaving the American tank operational. "Ricochet," Mueller shouted in disbelief. "Impossible! That should have penetrated cleanly." For the first time, doubt crept into Richter's confidence. German intelligence had consistently underestimated American technological improvements, particularly the rapid evolution of Sherman armor and ammunition systems. The tank he had just engaged represented the latest American production standards, incorporating lessons learned from thousands of combat encounters and supported by metallurgy research that rivaled anything produced in Germany. O'Brien's crew, meanwhile, had immediately identified the Tiger's position through the muzzle flash and begun evasive maneuvers while calling for immediate air support. Jackson threw the Sherman into reverse while traversing left, presenting the smallest possible target profile while maintaining situational awareness. "Compass base, this is Bulldog 6, O'Brien transmitted. "Taking direct fire from heavy armor," confirmed Tiger. "Immediate air support requested." Chen's response came within seconds. "Bulldog 6, Razor flight is inbound your position. Maintain current heading and mark target with smoke." Morrison, now screaming toward the ridge at 350 miles per hour, could see the Tiger's position clearly outlined against the frost-covered ground. The massive tank appeared motionless, apparently unaware of the approaching threat from above. Morrison armed his rockets and began the precise calculations needed to deliver maximum destruction against heavily armored targets. The P-47's rocket system represented advanced American engineering specifically designed to counter German armor superiority. Each 5-inch rocket carried a shaped charge warhead that could penetrate armor more effectively than conventional high-explosive bombs. The warhead's design focused explosive energy into a narrow cone of superheated metal, traveling at over 8,000 meters per second, capable of burning through even the Tiger's thick frontal armor. "Target acquired. Beginning rocket attack," Morrison announced, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Richter, reloading his main gun for a second shot, finally noticed the approaching aircraft through his peripheral vision. The distinctive silhouette of the P-47 appeared larger than expected, suggesting dangerously close proximity. For the first time during the engagement, genuine alarm replaced his earlier confidence. "Aircraft, diving attack," Richter shouted to his crew. "Emergency reverse, full power." But the Tiger I's massive weight and complex transmission system prevented rapid maneuvering. Kellner engaged reverse gear and applied maximum throttle, but the 57-ton machine could not accelerate quickly enough to escape Morrison's attack approach. The Tiger's top speed of 23 miles per hour seemed pathetically inadequate compared to the Thunderbolt's 350-mile-per-hour dive speed. Morrison released his first pair of rockets at 800 feet altitude, then immediately pulled into a steep climbing turn to avoid ground fire and prepare for additional attack runs. The rockets streaked toward the Tiger, trailing white smoke contrails, their trajectory corrected automatically by the sophisticated fire control system built into every P-47. The first rocket struck the Tiger's left track assembly, detonating with tremendous force that severed the steel links and immobilized the massive vehicle. The shaped charge warhead penetrated the track mechanism and damaged internal drive components, ensuring that Richter's crew could not maneuver away from subsequent attacks. The second rocket impacted the engine compartment, penetrating the rear armor and igniting fuel and hydraulic lines. "We're immobilized," Kellner reported, his voice tight with controlled panic. Engine temperature rising rapidly, hydraulics failing. Richter's world began collapsing around him as he realized the full implications of their situation. The Tiger tank that had seemed invincible moments earlier now sat helpless on the ridge, unable to move or effectively return fire against an aerial attacker. Worse, the smoke rising from their position would attract additional American aircraft like moths to flame. Morrison completed his climbing turn and positioned himself for a second attack run, this time approaching from a different angle to avoid any possible ground fire from surviving Tiger crew members. His remaining 6 rockets would be sufficient to ensure complete target elimination, but he followed established procedures for engaging heavy armor by systematically destroying all combat capability. "Razor 2, this is Razor Leader," Morrison transmitted to his wingman, Second Lieutenant Robert "Lucky" Thompson. "Join the attack. Target is immobilized but still operational. Let's finish this properly." Thompson's Thunderbolt dove from 11,000 feet, carrying 8 rockets of his own, plus 650 caliber machine guns loaded with armor-piercing ammunition. The 2 aircraft, working in coordination, could deliver devastating firepower against any ground target, representing the kind of overwhelming numerical advantage that characterized American military doctrine throughout the war. Inside the Tiger, Richter's crew faced their first genuine crisis after years of seemingly effortless victories. The sophisticated German engineering that had made their tank nearly invincible against other ground vehicles proved inadequate against coordinated air attack delivered by aircraft specifically designed to counter armor superiority. "Abandon tank," Richter commanded, recognizing that remaining inside the crippled Tiger would mean certain death. "Emergency evacuation, all crew out." But as the crew began their escape procedures, Muller spotted O'Brien's Sherman advancing up the ridge, supported by 3 additional American tanks that had maneuvered to flanking positions. The combined arms coordination that Richter had dismissed as inefficient now demonstrated its true effectiveness, with ground and air forces working together to eliminate German resistance systematically. "Americans advancing from multiple directions," Muller reported. "We're surrounded." The tactical situation had reversed completely within less than 10 minutes. Richter's powerful Tiger, which had dominated the battlefield through superior firepower and protection, now sat burning and immobilized, while American forces approached from 3 directions with air support overhead. The German advantages that had seemed decisive earlier proved meaningless against coordinated combined arms operations. Morrison's second attack run delivered 4 more rockets directly into the Tiger's fighting compartment, ensuring complete destruction of the vehicle's combat systems. The shaped charge warheads penetrated the turret armor and detonated inside the crew compartment, creating an inferno that consumed ammunition stores and equipment. Thompson followed immediately with his own rocket attack, systematically targeting different sections of the Tiger to ensure no possibility of repair or recovery. American doctrine emphasized complete elimination of enemy equipment rather than simple immobilization, reflecting the industrial capacity to replace losses that German forces could not match. As the Tiger burned, O'Brien's Sherman reached the crest of the ridge and positioned itself to accept the surrender of any surviving German crew members. The American tank commander could see 4 figures emerging from the smoking wreckage with their hands raised, apparently uninjured but clearly shocked by the sudden reversal of their tactical situation. "This is Bulldog 6, O'Brien transmitted. "Enemy armor eliminated. 4 prisoners secured. Request medical evacuation and intelligence personnel for interrogation." Richter, standing beside his destroyed tank with his hands raised, stared at the approaching Sherman in disbelief. The American tank that his 88mm gun had failed to penetrate now dominated his position, supported by aircraft overhead and additional armor advancing from multiple directions. Everything he had been taught about German technological superiority lay in smoking ruins around him. O'Brien dismounted from his tank and approached the German prisoners with his sidearm drawn but pointed at the ground. Despite years of combat, he maintained professional courtesy toward defeated enemies, reflecting American military training that emphasized proper treatment of prisoners of war. "Sprechen Sie English?" O'Brien inquired in heavily accented German. "Yes, I speak English," Richter replied, his voice hollow with defeat. "I am Hauptmann Klaus Richter, commanding this unit." The conversation that followed revealed the depth of German misunderstanding about American capabilities. Richter had been told that American industry produced inferior equipment in large quantities, but could never match German engineering quality or tactical effectiveness. The reality he now faced contradicted everything his training and experience had taught him about warfare. "Your tank," Richter said, studying the Sherman with professional interest despite his circumstances, "it should not have survived my gun. The armor is too thin, the design too simple." O'Brien smiled grimly. "German intelligence doesn't know everything, Captain. This is an M4A3E8 with improved frontal armor and upgraded ammunition storage, built in Detroit last month and shipped here in 3 weeks. We're producing over 1,000 per month now." The numbers struck Richter like physical blows. German production of Tiger tanks had never exceeded 25 units per month, and by late 1944, shortages of strategic materials had reduced output even further. American industry, meanwhile, had achieved production rates that German planners had considered impossible at the war's beginning. Morrison's Thunderbolt circled overhead, maintaining overwatch, while additional aircraft arrived to provide close air support for the ground forces. The sophisticated coordination between air and ground elements demonstrated organizational capabilities that German forces had never achieved, despite their tactical excellence at smaller scales. Chen, monitoring radio traffic from his forward air controller position, coordinated the arrival of additional support elements, including medical personnel, intelligence specialists, and recovery equipment. The systematic approach to post-combat operations reflected American doctrine that treated each engagement as part of larger strategic objectives rather than isolated tactical events. "Compass base to all stations," Chen transmitted. "Target eliminated, area secured, prisoners in custody. Continuing advance as planned." The entire engagement, from initial contact to complete resolution, had required less than 20 minutes. American forces had identified the threat, coordinated multiple weapon systems, eliminated enemy resistance, and secured the area while maintaining momentum toward their strategic objectives. The efficiency demonstrated capabilities that German planners had not anticipated when calculating their prospects for victory. Richter, now seated on the ground under guard while medics treated minor injuries to his crew, watched additional American vehicles arriving with supplies, replacements, and specialized equipment. The logistical capabilities supporting American operations exceeded anything he had witnessed during his service on multiple fronts. "How many tanks do you have?" Richter asked O'Brien during a quiet moment. "In this division?" "About 300, O'Brien replied casually. "The Third Army has over 2,000, and when we lose them, Detroit builds more." "How many Tigers does Germany have left?" Richter couldn't answer, partly because the information was classified, but mostly because the true numbers would have seemed pathetic compared to American production figures. German industry had built 1,347 Tiger tanks total during the entire war, while American factories produced nearly 50,000 Shermans in the same period. Morrison landed his Thunderbolt at a forward airstrip 30 miles away, where ground crews immediately began refueling and rearming the aircraft for additional missions. The turnaround time for American tactical aircraft averaged 90 minutes, allowing the same pilots and planes to conduct multiple sorties per day against different targets across a wide area. The maintenance crews servicing Morrison's P-47 included specialists trained in the latest American industrial methods, using standardized parts and procedures that enabled rapid repair and replacement of damaged components. The entire system reflected American approaches to warfare that emphasized sustainability and continuous operations rather than individual heroic efforts. Thompson, Morrison's wingman, had already taken off for his second mission of the day, carrying fresh rockets and ammunition to support another American advance 20 miles south. The ability to maintain continuous air support across multiple simultaneous operations demonstrated the industrial capacity that ultimately determined the war's outcome. Back on the ridge, American recovery teams began salvaging useful intelligence from the destroyed Tiger while preparing to remove the wreckage. The systematic approach to battlefield cleanup reflected doctrine that treated every engagement as an opportunity to gather information and improve future operations. Richter observed these activities with growing understanding of the forces that had defeated his unit. American success did not depend on superior individual courage or tactical brilliance, but on organizational systems that coordinated vast resources more effectively than any military force in history. "Your pilots," Richter commented to O'Brien, "they are very skilled." "They're okay," O'Brien replied, with characteristic American understatement. "But mostly they're well supported. Good radios, plenty of fuel, unlimited ammunition, and new aircraft whenever they need them. That's what wins wars." The conversation revealed fundamental differences in military philosophy between German and American approaches to warfare. German doctrine emphasized elite units equipped with superior technology and led by exceptional individuals, while American strategy relied on adequate technology, produced in overwhelming quantities, and coordinated through sophisticated organizational systems. As evening approached, Richter and his crew were transported to a prisoner-of-war facility where they would spend the remainder of the war studying American industrial capabilities through direct observation. The experience would fundamentally change their understanding of the conflict they had been fighting. The facility itself demonstrated American organizational competence. Clean, efficiently administered, and staffed by personnel trained in international law, it processed thousands of German prisoners while maintaining detailed records and providing adequate medical care and food supplies. The systematic approach to prisoner administration reflected the same industrial methods that characterized American military operations. During his interrogation, Richter learned details about American production capabilities that German intelligence had consistently underestimated. The United States was producing over 96,000 aircraft per year, compared to Germany's 25,000. American shipyards launched more tonnage each month than Germany's Navy had possessed at the war's beginning. Most shocking of all, American factories were still accelerating production while German industry struggled with material shortages and bombing damage. "We were told that America was a nation of shopkeepers who could never match German engineering," Richter confided to his interrogator, Major William Davis, a pre-war automotive engineer from Michigan who spoke fluent German. "German engineering is excellent," Davis replied diplomatically, "but engineering is only part of warfare. You also need raw materials, production capacity, transportation systems, and organizational coordination. America has advantages in all those areas. The numbers Davis shared painted a picture of industrial superiority that Richter had never imagined possible. American steel production exceeded German output by more than 4 to 1. American aluminum production was 10 times larger. American petroleum refining capacity was 20 times greater. These advantages translated directly into military capability that no amount of individual courage or tactical skill could overcome. Over the following weeks, Richter had opportunities to observe American military operations from the perspective of a prisoner of war. The systematic efficiency of supply operations, the rapid replacement of equipment and personnel, and the continuous flow of new technology demonstrated capabilities that German forces could not match. He witnessed American factories retooling production lines within weeks to incorporate battlefield lessons and engineering improvements. German industry, by contrast, required months or years to implement comparable changes when strategic materials were available at all. The contrast revealed organizational advantages that proved more decisive than any individual weapon system. Morrison continued flying combat missions until the war's end, accumulating over 200 combat hours and participating in dozens of successful ground attack operations. His survival rate, like that of most American aircrew, reflected superior training, adequate rest periods, and replacement aircraft that incorporated the latest safety improvements. The P-47 Thunderbolt proved one of the war's most effective ground attack aircraft, not because of revolutionary technology, but because American industry could produce them in sufficient quantities to maintain continuous operations against all priority targets. The combination of adequate individual performance with overwhelming numerical superiority characterized American approaches to military technology throughout the conflict. O'Brien's Sherman tank continued advancing eastward with the Third Army until German forces surrendered in May 1945. His crew survived the war partly through skill and courage, but mostly through superior support systems that provided reliable maintenance, adequate supplies, and rapid medical evacuation when needed. The engagement between Richter's Tiger and O'Brien's Sherman became part of a larger pattern that repeated thousands of times across multiple theaters. German forces often achieved local tactical superiority through superior individual equipment and training, but could not overcome American advantages in production, logistics, and organizational coordination. Statistical analysis conducted after the war revealed the mathematical inevitability of American victory once industrial production reached peak efficiency. German forces faced opponents who could replace losses faster than German industry could inflict them, while simultaneously improving their own technology and tactics through systematic analysis of battlefield experience. The destruction of Richter's Tiger unit demonstrated how American military doctrine had evolved to counter German tactical advantages through combined arms coordination and overwhelming material superiority. The lesson transcended individual courage or technical innovation, revealing warfare's transformation into an industrial process that favored nations with superior organizational capabilities. And that concludes our story. If you made it this far, please share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this historical account surprised you most? Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from World War II and check out the video on screen for another incredible tale from history. Until next time.